Oh, YouTube's up. Right.
Rabbi, are you talking right now? Can't hear you.
All right, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
All right, shalom, shalom. All right, how's everybody doing?
All is well, Baruch Hashem.
I mean, yeah, Rabbi's on? Yeah, right?
Yeah, he's on. I think he's just kind of getting some things together here. How are you doing? You doing well?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Yeah, just you know, feeling good about the Most High and just learning.
Yeah, man. One thing I do like about this life, especially for me, because it was a beautiful transition from Islam. Um, the learning capacity is insane. It's like there's so much to learn you can't keep up. You know what I'm saying? And I really like that because I'm very strong on that, cradle to the grave type thing to keep learning. So it just really makes us stronger, you know?
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Yeah, that's powerful. It's powerful. It's life changing. It's life changing.
Oh yeah, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm loving it, man. I'm loving it. This is just for me.
Hear me?
Feels
Oh, you could hear me. Okay, cool. I didn't know if the earphones were like not letting you hear me. So did you can see the screen?
yes.
Okay,
Hey,
perfect. Okay, cool. So so I'm talking to this guy, and so the whole thing is perception, right? So we're spending all this time, we're learning Kabbalah, we're learning, Gemara, we're learning all these things. Like, but ultimately, when we say that learning Torah helps us serve God, what does that ultimately mean, right? Because people could just think like, oh, well, I memorized a bunch of verses, I could explain you the story of Exodus, I could tell you creation, this, blah, blah, which are good. It's all good information, but ultimately, especially when we're learning Kabbalah, what we're doing is we're learning perception tools, right? Because how we perceive something determines how we experience it. So Kabbalah comes in not just to bring deep understandings of the Torah. When we talk about the four levels of the Torah, of every verse, every every letter, whatever, we talk about pardes, right? Peshat, which is a little understanding, rimus, which is hints, and you have drash, which is a deeper explanation, and then you have sod, pardes. You have sod, it's an acronym. Pardes, it's sod, which is secrets, right? So we learn every single verse from that frame. Every single letter has that frame, right? So why is that important? Oh, we want to have a deeper level of understanding of the Torah. No, not just that. We should be able to see the pardes in our life. We should see the little interpretation. We should be able to see that things have certain hints connected to them. We can see that things have a deeper understanding. And then we have a level, which is called soul, which is secret, which is something that's totally concealed, even to the five senses, right? And so that's how we're seeing reality. When we walk into a room, that's what we're seeing. A room has a wall, which is a little understanding. Maybe the walls have a paintings on it. The paintings will give you an insight, maybe who's there, whose house it is. Then you have a deeper level of it, which is the explanation of the place itself, how it got there, the whole thing. And you have a deeper level, which is the energy that's in the room. Right? This is it. So when we're learning these different things in the Torah, these are tools of perception. Right? And so what I'm doing at this point is taking my experience as a human being, as a quote unquote African American, right? And I'm taking that experience and saying, well, how do I reinterpret that experience based off of the perception tools that I've learned? Right? I mean, it's very nice. You read the Torah, wow, deep level. Oh, Yosef really means this, and Paro really understood this one. You know what I mean? Very nice. You're learning Rashi. Very nice. You're learning, some of the deep stuff. It's very good. But how does it expand your life? Okay, so here's an article that just recently, you can see it was just written very recently, and thank God for a lot of the editing tools I have access to through artificial intelligence. I was able to edit it very quickly and then use it for the share, right? So I was thinking maybe, Elder, you could start us off and you could just maybe read the first couple paragraphs and then maybe stop and reflect. Maybe you have a thought, maybe you have a thought, maybe not anybody else. Otino, has a thought or whatever. And we could just kind of like go through it this way and then really build out this idea instead of me just saying it. I think it's easier to see it and to talk it out, right? I think it's a higher level of learning in that way. So, Elder, you got it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Okay, so leaving the white man's dream behind and embracing God's dream.
Wait,
the architecture.
Wait, there's 1 second before you go there. Is that not a title?
Yeah, that's the title. That's the title. It's the title because it's dealing with the conflict between someone else's perception or dream for you, that it's possible somebody can have a dream for you that you don't have for yourself, and that is very poignant. Is dealing with ashlag, as far as the projecting on something else. All right. So
go ahead,
leaving the white man. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Leaving the white man's dream behind and embracing God's dream. 1, the architecture of the mirage. For centuries, the collective consciousness of the Western world has been anchored in a construct often referred to as the dream. In the American context, this dream is marketed as a meritocratic climb toward comfort, status, and material security. However, as a man defined by the census and the social contract as African American, I have come to realize that this is not a universal aspiration. It is a specific engineered vision. It is the white man's dream, a Greco-Roman blueprint of reality that judges the worth of a human being by the externality of their existence. To live within this dream is to agree to be a variable in an equation. It tells me that I am a skin tone, a race, height, a weight, an economic bracket, and a profession. This system is excellent for the workforce. It organizes human resources into neat files for production and consumption. But it is a prison for the human spirit. It does not allow me to go back to my essence It does not permit me to define myself in the way God has defined me as a soul, neshama. To truly live, I had to leave that dream behind. I had to decolonize my soul and awaken to God's dream. A reality where identity is not a social construct, but a divine spark. As Howard Thurman, the spiritual advisor to Dr. King, once wrote, the movement of the Spirit of God in the hearts of men often calls them to act against the world in which we live. To act against this world is to refuse to be defined by its categories.
Let's stop here for 1 second. So this replay,
Mhm.
so this replay, I know it was a lot of stuff done. So this reality, you know, not only is it like a moralistic argument that I'm making, right? But the bigger point is that this is the world after AI, right? Because AI, robot technology, is going to marginalize all human labor, right? That's one of the books I have coming out, right? Because we have to deal with these issues. So since human labor is out, the human being is going to have to now redefine itself, right? Because I'm not just a worker anymore. I mean, you got a robot that could do exactly what I'm doing. You got artificial intelligence who could do all the skill sets you would learn in the university. So what is my contribution to the world now? Like, what am I, right? And so that's the kind of like impetus under these like this first section is to say like, okay, well, now that I have all this time on my hand, now that I have all this access to pleasure, you know, through technology, like what am I? Like what is my existence? So I'm starting with this concept of and I'm saying it to you guys because this evaluation process that we're going to, it's a cognitive process, right? And that cognitive process, you guys, this is your dilemma too. You know what I mean? Like and everyone you know, right? Regardless of their ethnicity, right? Because we're moving past that. All right, go ahead, Elby, you got it. Doing a great job.
You know, just also to make a quick comment on that, you know, when we talk about the socialization process in the institutions that actually build and are used as the foundational instruments to build the socialization process from a child from birth up until 13 is very significant because what we are taught from a socialized standpoint, even from birth, being African Americans versus that of our counterparts is different. It's a different type of environment, a different type of structure. And so we are always in a consistent state of survival, basically, and in a constant state of emergency. And so from that standpoint, we are told in that environment that our behavior patterns and our responses to the narrative that is put upon us is not palatable. But in any human existence, when you have anyone put into a certain predicament and with certain stimuli, you're going to have the same responses. And so that socialization process needs to be checked. So this is good. Toda. All right. So chapter 2, the prison of externality, the Greco-Roman legacy. The Western world is the heir to a philosophical tradition that prioritizes the physics of physical, the observable, and the tangible, from the Greek obsession with the ideal form to the Roman genius for administrative classification and legal status. The system we inhabit is obsessed with the surface. In this system, you are what you can be measured to be. If you are labeled Black, you are placed in a class system designed hundreds of years ago by people whose intentions were rooted in extraction and separation. This narrative does not appreciate the soul. It ignores it. It forces the African American to build an identity based on a reaction to oppression rather than an action of divine creation. When we define ourselves by our bodies, we enter a state of perpetual scarcity. If I am my body and you are your body and our bodies are different, then we are competitors for limited resources. This echoes the warning of Martin Buber, who spoke of the I-it relationship, treating others as objects to be used rather than I-thou relationships where we meet soul to soul. The Greco-Roman trap ensures that we are always fighting for a seat at a table that was built to keep us divided. Number 3, the perspective of the traveler, breaking the American lens. My perspective shifted not through theory, but through the physical act of departure. For nearly a decade, I have lived outside the borders of the United States. I have walked through different cultures, spoken different languages, different tongues, and broken bread with people who do not subscribe to the American ethic class system. In my travels, I met people who saw themselves first as members of a tribe, as keepers of a custom, or as children of a specific lineage. They did not look at me through the lens of American racism because that specific virus had not infected their social architecture. They saw a man, they saw a soul. This mirrors the sentiment of James Baldwin, who, after living in France, realized that the American identity was a fabrication meant to protect the specific power structure rather than a truth of the human heart. Living abroad taught me that the white man's dream is actually a nightmare of isolation. By decolonizing my soul, I stopped asking, how do I fit into this society? And started asking, how do I align with my creator? I realized that the African American narrative was a script I was handed, but I am the actor, not the character. The
Any
unified.
any reflections on that?
Ye-
You weren't expecting that James Baldwin, but yeah, go ahead.
Yes,
Go ahead.
there's a reflection. It's basically no, very light reflection. I have never lived out the country, but I have been looking around, like just via through the YouTube, watching other African Americans, travel around the world. Now, clearly racism is everywhere, but there's been a strong stance on, yeah, listen, how we live in America, as the elder has said, with time and what you're saying right here through race is totally different in other places, right? So yes, what I do reflect on that is environment, depending on the environment, how people are affected by that environment, it's gonna what? It's gonna touch how you are dealing with things, but you are in control of trying to align with your environment by first aligning with God. And you could probably bring yourself a lot more peace than drama or perceive or waiting on drama. Because sometimes when you perceive it, you could create it. But if you are in a different alignment and you're moving different, things open up in a different way. I know that was a little confusing. I was putting the words together, but pretty much to sum it up, what I was saying is you can pretty much create your own destiny based off your mindset.
You got it, Elder.
Toda, I really appreciate that comment, that insert there, because you brought up something, you mentioned something about just even our dealing with our perception of God and how what we were taught about God, just the whole perception of God was that of a created ideology. That, there's the idea of when we talk about Christianity, when Christianity was presented are forced upon our people. The idea, the whole motive behind it was to keep the masses docile. So our perception of God that is within the Black community, within the African American community, is that of a projection, is that of a dream. But it's a dream to maintain a certain amount of power and to restrict and restrain a certain level of power. Because if what you think about your God and his relationship to you And your ability to make a difference and a change in your life it becomes a systemic problem for you. You know, you will never find your way out of the maze. You have the improper tools, and that's why Judaism has been so important. And I believe that Judaism is a dynamic perspective for the African American. It is I believe is the best perspective for the African American. Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, the thing is, the key point is not to create someone's thinking, right? Because the whole point is igniting the soul to express its uniqueness. So at this point, what we're just doing, we're discovering, we're attempting in this literature to create like another cognitive process of reasoning. Like, okay, this is one way to see it. Here's another way to see it. It's not to say that this is the only way to see it, right? But it's just saying there are alternative ways of understanding the self. You got to.
All right. Okay, so we have the unified field. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Unified field. The four kingdoms of creation. To embrace God's dream is to see the spark, nitzotz, within all of creation. My soul is not separate from the world. It is the pinnacle of the interconnected hierarchy of existence. Ancient Jewish wisdom, particularly in the teaching of the Etz Chaim, describes four levels of being that exist both outside of us and within us. First, the rock kingdom, domin, the silent. This is the level of inanimate matter. It represents our physical foundation, the minerals in our bones, and the stability of the earth. The white man's dream treats us as if we are only rocks, static objects to be moved. Souls are stacked. But God's dream shows us that even the rock has a spark of divine will keeping it in existence. The plant kingdom, zomeach, the growing. This is the level of vitality and growth like a plant. We have to drive to reach for the light. It represents our subconscious biological life when we are told we are merely consumers in an economic bracket. Our growth is stunning. God's dream allows our souls to sprout beyond the soul of our social circumstances. The animal kingdom, Chai, the living. This is the level of emotion, instinct, and movement. We share with the animal kingdom the capacity for feeling and the drive for self-preservation. The Greek-Roman system often manipulates this level, keeping us at a state of fight or flight through racial tension and scarcity. The human kingdom, Medeber, the speaker. This is the highest level, the soul's true home. It is characterized by the power of speech and the ability to recognize the creator. While we contain the rock, the plant, and the animal, we are not limited by them. We are the speakers who can declare the unity of God. When I see myself as a soul, I see that the same spark within me is within the tree, the mountain, and my fellow human being. This is the ultimate integration. It is not a social integration where we tolerate each other's skin tones. It is a spiritual integration where we recognize our shared source. Soul integration in the academy and the community. Did you want to pause there?
Yeah. Any reflections on? So, like,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that what it does is it creates, this section creates a mindset that we stand to fall victim if we play the rules within that system. Because, and this is something that we have to be very careful about. When we are poisoned by the poison itself, instead of rising above that system. As I told you a couple of, I think a month or so ago, W. Du Bois has a book called The Souls of Black Folk. In the beginning of it, he talks about how he had to intellectually rise above the wall of racism, meaning that he didn't allow racism to affect him and how he viewed human beings. Because when he traveled the world, he saw that everyone doesn't believe like this. And so for us to have an affected prejudice or an affected viewpoint or perception of other people, we'll be doing the exact same thing, falling victim to the same problem. And so we have to rise above that and be able to see all men and see plant life, see the rock kingdom, see all of these kingdoms, and notice that that soul that's within them is also a part of me and how we're all interconnected. And so this is a very good lens here.
The thing is, beautiful. And the thing is, to support what those were saying, it's like, what are the tools that we've been given in the system that have allowed us to evaluate who we are, right? It's not to criticize, but it's just to say like, hey, I haven't really been given any tool, because the frame of thinking of the society is rooted in this idea, of this European idea, which is like, hey, the world is just externalities. And because we haven't heard anything other than that, we just go into it and not even think twice. You got it, Elder.
Soul integration in the academy and the community. To move from the white man's dream to God's dream, we must overhaul our institutions. Currently, our universities and community centers are often breeding grounds for the externality model. Can you scroll up some? Okay.
Sorry about that.
They teach us how to be better assets, activists, or employees. I want to start back again so we get that full understanding there. It says right here, yeah. To move from the white man's dream to God's dream, we must overhaul our institutions. Currently, our universities and community centers are often breeding grounds for the externality model. They teach us how to be better assets, activists, or employees, but they rarely teach us how to be souls. Number one, modern education and universities, from careerism to calling. In our current university system, the focus is on the rock and the plant levels, material, success, and biological survival. We judge a university success by the economic bracket its graduates enter. Soul integration would demand a shift toward the Med Debar speaker level. Universities should be places where the curriculum is decolonized, not just by changing the names of the authors we read, but by changing the fundamental purpose of the students of the learning. Education should be an unveiling of the student's divine essence. Instead of asking, what can you do for the workforce? We should ask, what spark has the Creator placed in you that can heal the world? When we educate the soul, racism becomes a logical impossibility. For how can one spark of God be superior to another? Number two, community centers, hubs of connection. Our community centers are currently often triage units for the failures of the external system dealing with poverty, crime, and health. A soul integrated community center would recognize the hierarchy of needs. While we must tend to the animal needs of the body, food, safety, we must also nurture the human need for connection to nature and the Creator. These centers should be spaces where we relearn our connection to the rock, plant, and animal kingdoms. Community gardens are not just about food. They are about the soul witnessing the zomak level of God's creation. Inter-ethnic dialogues shouldn't be about managing differences, but about recognizing the shared neshama that hums beneath different skin tones. The illusion of difference and the reality of scarcity. The system of externality. Go ahead.
If it's okay, I do
Yeah,
have
please.
to ask. Hmm?
Yeah, please.
All right. Now, I want to ask this question, and just to say this ahead of time, I know I'm just coming in, I'm catching up, I'm learning, right? So my question may be a little far behind, but I would like for you brothers to please help me bring this up because this is something that I've been on my mind. Um, as we study this, and as I try to catch up, like I see where we're at, and I go back, I read it, and I try to catch up, right? So this is a thing that question I got. All right. So when it comes to the part of actually practicing Judaism, right? From what I understand, it is beautiful if you could practice at home, but it's best if you have community. That's what the understanding I was on. Now, where I'm at in New York, um, you have Hebrew Israelites who, no, you have Hebrew Israelites, and there would be a big distinction in attitude, act, and dress between Hebrew Israelites and Jews, right? But we know from reading the same, whatever, we get it the same, but different people. So for somebody like myself, like I was asking, um, from what I have learned and with from Rabbi from you and you know the rabbinate of Africa, which I have given, we're looked at as Jews who's returning here in America. So my thing is, in order to practice the Judaism, especially I have kids, I have two kids and a wife. Do you think it's necessary for us to go through a conversion here under under the Europeans because their conversion process may not be not for what I was looking at what the Grand Rabbinate of Africa has. It's like two different styles of conversion. Do you think that would be necessary in order for us to practice Judaism at a higher level because community, institutions, and things are different?
I don't know. I just think you have to decide what path you want to go on and who you want to work with and where you feel comfortable. But I mean, it's for me. I mean, it's too early for me to say. For me, it's too early. Like we're just I'm not. Like I don't necessarily see converting as being the goal. If that's something that a
Me
person
neither.
aspires to do, but if that's somebody aspires to do, I support it, right? There's people in our group that are going through that process, and I support it. The process I went through, and Chief Rabbi Pinchas and everyone involved, right? So
Yes.
it's just where everybody wants to be. I don't think there's a definitive answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Elder, please.
All right. Let's see here. Let's see. Okay. The illusion of difference and the reality of scarcity. The system of externality thrives on the myth of scarcity. If we are only bodies, then there is only so much land, so much money, so much power. This leads to the class system that keeps us in a state of survival of the fittest. But in God's dream, the soul is infinite. As Mahatma Gandhi famously said, each one has to find his peace from within. And peace, to be real, must be unaffected by outside circumstances.
Mm.
When we reevaluate our identity based on the soul, the mechanism of racism simply evaporates. Racism requires a belief that the external is the internal. This realization is for all people. White Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans are all victims of the same branding. They have been told they are their whiteness or their wealth, which isolates them from their own divinity. Conclusion. Awakening to the true essence. Leaving the white man's dream was the most terrifying and liberating act of my life. It meant letting go of the security of being defined by a system, even if that definition was oppressive. But in its place, I found the dream of God. I am not a race. I am not a profession. I am a neshama. I am a Holy Spirit, a spark from the Creator, sent into this world to connect, to love, and to elevate all of creation, whether in a university lecture hall or a community garden. The mission is the same: to stop looking at the vessel and start looking at the light. The destructive narrative of an identity isolated from the soul is over. The era of the soul has begun. When we all finally wake up from the dream of externality, we will find that we were never enemies and we were never alone. We were always part of the same divine whole, waiting on the courage to see ourselves as God sees us.
Okay, so we made it through. Let's figure it out, right? Hold on a second. Okay, definitely. Okay, so we made it through it. Those Rockies. I just want to say this one because I want to talk it out a little bit. Is saying that, like, again, a lot of the opportunity to talk about these issues in this way has mostly to do with technology, right? Because of technology's effect on the human life, meaning, labor and all these things, which are like essential part of Western society, right? And so now that we have technology, now we have to reevaluate who are we? Like, what are we, right? Like, are we workers? Are we this? Are we professions or ethnicity? Because that social order was great for a world that needed humans to produce, right? We have basketball games, football games, all these things, and to they're all there to deal with this this concept of competition, right? This concept of conquering. Even in our discourse, like the concept of being right, seeking to be right, seeking to have more information, seeking to have discourse for the sake of dominating another person, right? All these different mechanisms are a byproduct of a society that's built on competition, built on survival of the fittest, built on massive production, built on a sense of even root paranoia, right? Where it's just like, oh my God, I don't want to be homeless. Oh my God, look, oh, the neighbor, they got a bigger car than me. Oh my God. And so, and this is really our design. Like this, like you look around you, you see most people, you see the clothes that they're buying. Why are they buying those clothes? Why are they buying that jewelry? Why are they buying those watches? Because of this exact component, right? When you see all the TV shows are rooted in the rich and the famous, and you think about how interesting sports is. It's like sports is like people who have a very unique physical anatomy, and they're glorified because they're so different than us. I mean, even when you think about actresses and models, even they're physically unique, right? In a lot of ways, and they're distant from us. So we have a society where everything's like above us, right? Everything's big, and then even when you look at a child, when a child's born in the house, you look at its relationship to like the kitchen, to the bathroom, to the rest of the house. Everything's so much bigger than it that they need help. They need guidance, right? And we think, oh, because I'm older and I don't need my parents to be up on me, or I don't need that sense of guidance, that somehow I'm elevated. But this is the same way that our trajectory as adults. In the same way that everything's bigger than the child, and a child needs help to get there, is not sufficient. That's the same way we are emotionally and intellectually and spiritually in our society. So that's what we're addressing. Now, I'm speaking from a Black perspective, right? I'm speaking from a narrative. I think it's easier for people who come from my background to really question the narrative, right? To question what it is, because the other side, the side of whiteness, is like, oh, well, no, you're pure and you're holy and you're better and you're not cursed and you're sinless. And all these different components. It's kind of hard to let that go. It feels kind of good, right? I mean, it plays on the ego in a particular way. So these are just some of the dilemmas that, as a human race, as a human species, as Adam Kadmon, right? That's not manifest in the physical. That component is an important element, right? In being able to reevaluate the world around us, to be able to see how the rock kingdom is a whole world in itself. And there's a whole set of meanings, right? And the same thing with the plants, and the same thing with the animals, and the same thing with human beings. There's different levels of the human being that we haven't even tapped into yet. But these are like basic ideas for us in the spiritual world of learning. We've been learning this for the last, couple of years or years. I don't know how long we've been learning at this point, but this is what we've been doing. But now we apply it to our everyday life, and we apply it to the themes of perception that we were given. It becomes revolutionary, right? So, Elder, you have any points on this?
Baruch Hashem. I think too that the idea is making that distinction between who God says we are, and then what mankind says that we are, because I think that it takes time and it takes a process, because the whole world has been affected by this dynamic, and because of it, it's going to take some time for a lot of healing, and to have the appropriate tools in order to do so, I think is very, very important, because like I said, we've all been victims of it. Even that last part where you talk where you write about just the scarcity. The scarcity makes you feel a lack. And whenever you feel lack, that's a problem. We know that if we feel down, or we feel insufficient, or we feel sorrowful, or we feel like we don't have enough, then that causes problems with us receiving from the Shekinah. That there's a problem with us receiving from the Spirit of God. And so from that lack, that keeps us in a constant state of not being able to hear clearly. And so from that dynamic, when you remove the idea, because whenever you feel like you lack someone, you feel like you're in competition, it makes you hasty, it makes you nervous, it makes you feel as if something is being held back from you. I feel like there's one area is better than the other. But the realization is, and the reality is that if we trust in God, and we trust in Him, we put all of our trust in Him, then what the lot that He has for me is the lot that He has for me, and there's nothing, no circumstances on earth can outwit God. And so therefore, I just need to submit to what God is put before me, and walk that path, and whatever He tells me, that's what we do. And so I think it's important to really come to that place of calmness. And it's a difficult place to get to. It's not a very easy place to get to. I think that we have to pray and seek the Most High, and it really takes time to get to that place where we're comfortable in who God says that we are. So Torah.
Yeah, on that point. So yeah, but that's the spiritual work. That's Avraham, right? When you hear about Avraham being in his father's house at a young age and destroying his idols, I mean, you could look at it on a literal level, which is like, okay, he walks in, there are these idols, and he destroys them. Or you could look at it another way and say, well, actually, he was just, when you think about an idol is a false connection to the infinite. So when he said he destroyed the idols of his father's house, that's the beginning. He destroyed all of his dad's way of thinking. Not like his father traveled with him. His dad died, with him. He took care of his father. So it wasn't an anti-father statement. What he's saying is that the perceptions of reality that his father was given, he destroyed those idols at a young age. And so no, that's not the way. I love my dad, right? I have a very nice life. My dad was protecting me from Nimrod. But the reality is, it's like, this is not the way, right? And so when you have that that dynamic of destroying the idols of their father's house. This is like saying, well, the ways that my dad thought you could connect to reality, that's not the way. Even though I love my father and I'm honoring my father, the Torah tells us that, but the goal is to go past that level, right? So this workforce system, and it doesn't mean don't work or anything like that, but it's seeing the definitions of it and our self-perceptions are given. Now you could probably even do more creativity and more expansion because now your self-esteem is not involved in it. Now, like having $100 million in the bank, it doesn't mean that you're a better person. It just means you have a lot of opportunities to give tzedakah. You know, you have a lot of reasons to make sure you don't fall into the trap of ego and vanity and all these things. You know what I mean? So it just depends on how you look at it. So yeah, so we're dealing with that, but this is Avraham Avinu. People say they want to walk a spiritual path. You can bring that external system into your spirituality, and you're finished. You're finished. You don't get the adventure of Avraham Avinu. You don't get the adventure of Yosef Asadik. You don't get the adventure of any of these people, Rabbi Kiva, any of these people you read about. You don't get that at Ramchal. You listen to what Ramchal's teaching is. You think he was connected to that system of thinking? Not even a little bit. Right? And what happens is that people go in this path and they bring that trauma with them on their spiritual path. And the next thing you know, they're a Black Jew and they're fighting for equality and, you know, in the Jewish community, and, you know, why is it this way? And instead of going deeper into the spiritual tools and being on that path, that journey path, like Avraham Avinu, right? And figuring out who you are. Yes, you have a community. Yes, you dive in on Shabbos. Yes, you know, you eat kosher. You have people over. You feed guests, just like Avraham Avinu did. You know, you congregate in the town on certain days. Just like you see right now in the Book of Exodus, God told the people to collectively bring their sheep together. Right? You're hearing about the Mishkan, people coming together. So you have that component. But look at it through the eyes of Avraham Avinu, not through classic religion, right? Because if you see the religious model, then you're going to be like, oh, okay, well, you know, you're going to want to be on. You now turn into a secular system where you're trying to be accepted and this and that. No, you should have friends. You should have good character traits. People should want to be around you. But that's not the goal. Is to be like, oh, well, I'm liked and I have all these people. That's not the point. The point is to be on your journey and to utilize the tools, community, Torah, holidays, learning, you know, children, all these different things. These are all gifts to help you transcend to the infinite. You can't do it by yourself, right? You can reach certain levels, but community is where everything's at. Avraham Avinu built a community, right? And him and his wife, they grew, you know, from that, right? So it's just to say back again on our side is like, you know, back again on our side it's just to be able to understand what this thing is about, because if we're not transcending, what are we accomplishing, right? It's just another religion, right? Judaism is about transcending. The Torah is about transcending. Who can you become? You start with Moshe Rabbeinu, a guy whose mom had to put him in the Nile River just so he could stay alive. Had to put him in a river, man. And then it becomes the person who saves that very nation. Yosef Asadik is sold into slavery. Nobody count him out. He becomes the guy who saves the world. David Amelech, people thought he was a mamzer, right? That he wasn't even a kosher child for it, right? Type of a thing. And he turns out to be, you know, the Mashiach of the generation, right? So it's just saying that, like, you know, when we calibrate this journey, is to really be like in a healthy place of like what we're getting into. That's why people are like, oh, I want to convert. Because we believe that by doing these set of actions, I must be better, or I'll be accepted, or I do this. But wait, why are we even dealing with that way? Why not just deal with the journey? When a person's at that point and says, hey, I want to join the community and I want to be a part of the community, I want to be a part of the mission, that's when they should pursue it. But they shouldn't pursue it to become holy, to be one with God. They do that on their own. And maybe that community is not, you know, I mean, God willing, in the future we'll be able to affect, hundreds of millions of people, right? So, people are going to go be better, whatever their religion is, right? And they could go and be a better version of that, but they could decolonize themselves. And perhaps when you decolonize yourself, and you decolonize your spirituality, then you're going to start looking for other things, right? When I met the Rob Berg and then met the Kabbalah Center, that was the beginning of that Neshama conversation for me. That was like 2003. And so, and it's still going, as you can see, right? And so that conversation was like, well, who am I really? Where's my fulfillment really come from? It comes from the life force of the Creator. So what tools are going to get me there? Community is a tool for the connection to the life force of the Creator. When you have friendships with people, when you're involved in their lives, when you're involved in your life, when you share spirituality together, when you pray together, when you eat together in holy ways, these are very valuable experiences, right? And so those valuable experiences is ultimately what shapes us as individuals, right? And that's the goal of this whole thing, is to be a fully alive human being connected to people, the human kingdom, the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, earth. This is what we're here for, to be connected to that and to define ourselves based off of the enrichment of that connection. Everything else is religion, is status, is this, hey, I did this, I went to this place, I lived in Israel, blah, 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 blah. And that's cool. And there are levels of connections even with that. But at the end of the day, what is the goal? Right? And the goal is to be a complete human being, to be Ben Adam, right? It's to be in the frame of Avraham, be in the frame of all the Avos, all the Moshe Rabbeinu, all these people, in your way, in your time, in your generation, right? Not to be like them. They did what they did. You don't need to go to Mount Sinai with a group of people. There's other things that need to be done, right? So it's all relative. So anyways, Nasi, you have anything on that?
Definitely. Based off the question I asked earlier, reading the article, having this conversation, and just battling my own internal thoughts, this was a very uplifting, freeing conversation. And that's what I really have to say. There's really no more deeper I have to go, but it was uplifting and freeing. So, in all essence, any questions that I had prior were already answered through the article and through the conversation. And what this group did, like you said earlier, I had an internal struggle. The internal struggle was like, yo, keep moving, keep pushing, keep doing your thing, and let certain things come in naturally versus should you do X, Y, and Z now? So having this conversation, this group was extremely important because it stopped me from having that wrestling match between them two thoughts. And it's allowed me to do what I said I was going to do, continue growing my spirit, my children's spirit, my wife's spirit. So the only thoughts I had on this is the group was extremely important to help push me further on the path and clear up some confusion. So that's all I really had to say. And I'm actually very thankful for this lesson we had today.
Amen. Amen. And we're going to go deeper into these in this area because this is kind of like a Torah that really is reflective of our culture. So the thing is, on this point, is just saying, like, I mean, what is this thing about? One of the things in the article, if you remember, was this idea of how terrifying it is to leave the system of pre-definitions and entering the system of self-definition. That's the most difficult thing. It's like in our society, like if you don't like, think about the idea of like a degree or a profession or your intelligence, right? Like we have this report card, right? And the report card from a young age trains us to define ourselves by third parties, right? That's just in our behavior. That's how we communicate, the whole thing, right? So assuming that, you have a good teacher or someone who, I mean, you can hear anything about yourself, depending what school you're at, what time, what the agenda is, you can hear anything. And then you talk about professions. Professions are something you have to be given by an employer, right? You have to be given that. Your social status, how intelligent you are, is given to you by society, right? The person says, here's a degree. You are now a doctor. You know what I mean? You are now, and if you don't have that approval, under the guise of protecting society, if you say you're something and you're not, you could be arrested for fraud. Now we could look at that, but well, you know, I don't want people saying they're doctors if they're not really doctors, and I'm looking for medical help. I get it, but that's at the gross extreme of the idea, right? But on the other aspect of it, it's like, well, where does that stop? Where does the idea of if I am not acknowledged by a third party, where does that stop? I'm looking at the workforce and productivity, but what about me and my own definition? There's an idea with different cultures. It's like if you speak differently than the cultural narrative, you're a sellout. You're an Uncle Tom. You're ashamed of who you are. You hate yourself, right? Somebody could read exactly what we're reading and try to deduce and say, "Oh, well, no, you're ashamed of your blackness." Wait, what do you mean? Why I'm not allowed to question it? I'm just supposed to live in life. Everyone just tells me what I am, and I just okay, and I just keep it moving like that. That's what we're doing, right? So all of these things have to be addressed, in order to continually build that relationship with the show. And so we're moving it out of that concept. We're moving it out of that, and then it's like, and then you think about all the religions that have come into, or spiritual movements that come in the Black community, and how much of them were rooted in the concept of Blackness and Black power. And they told people they had solutions for their problem using the very matrix that has imprisoned them. I mean, look, this is like real. This is like not me making this up. Just look around, look at history, look at the messages of all the leaders that came, and the ideas of race and color that they used to organize people in othering. Right? These persons are the devil. This is this. All
Yep.
all those movements were rooted in darkness, no light. None of them had any chance of being successful ever. None of them dealt with the human being. They only perpetuated the Greek-Roman system in terms of self-definition. Right? This is a huge concept. Any last thoughts on this?
No, just freeing. That's what I would say. Just freeing conversation.
Yeah, and we have to critique a lot of it. Thank you, brother. We have to critique a lot of the historical data, even scientific theory that's rooted in race and ethnicity. Even that's a farce. They made up sciences on this stuff. They wrote books about it. They came universities all based on that African American studies, this study, and then they tell you what the narrative is. They tell you who your heroes are. They tell you who the intellectuals are. They tell you, well, he was one of the great philosophers. Well, how do I know? Okay, I have to listen to you. But the system itself was only rooted in me being a worker. It was never designed for me to connect to my inner divinity. It told me I didn't even have it. Maybe I could become virtuous if I became really rich and famous or something, and then people would honor me and see a value in me. Other than that, I'm nothing. I have 50 cents in my pocket. I'm nothing. This is the world that we live in. Anyway, so we'll just keep moving on this. This conversation for me was very inspiring as well. And it gives me more confidence to go in this area and just really dissect the effect of this philosophical approach to reality and how destructive it is to the human soul, to the human imagination, to human unity, right? And it's like right in front of us. So we have to start critiquing everything that's focused on race and ethnicity